posizione, verifichi che la va bene. Aiuto? No. Poi qua sono state messe 3 slide per motivi tecnici per evitare di nere. La prima è questa qua, poi lei si può spostare o con il tricino avanti che consiglio, perché ormai si rischia di sbagliare. No, poi visto voleva il puntatore, ok, arriva qua, poi o fa così e poi se muove il mouse, vede che si vede, ok? È a sua discrezione, rimane ferma lì e non tocca nient'altro, in modo che non appaia una questione. Rimane ferma lì, quando lei ha terminato lo sto così torna indietro, allora deve lasciarlo così. Quando vuol partire, io se deciso ne sono.
Allora, cominciamo questo secondo incontro del ciclo al cuore dell'esperienza.
So let's start the second meeting of the cycle entitled At the Heart of Experience.
Differente da quello di ieri che riguardava
And this is a totally different context from the dramatic situation of the African circumstances. This is a totally different situation, that of a highly developed world. I met Maria Teresa Landi many years ago when she was at university. She had come from Foggia to study medicine, and she met with this movement, and we were in Umbria, and she told me at lunch that she felt like a dot, like a small, very small, when she was listening to a person who was talking about the greatness of the individual, of the self, and she was moved by his words. And it is true that God takes us on the basis for what we are seeking. So she was a student in medicine. She was a very good student. Then she started to work with Pier Alberto Bertazzi, the current director of the Clinica del Lavoro of Milan. You may not know it, but he is one of the inventors of CL. So Giussani founded CL, and Bertazzi came up with the name together with other people. And after the crisis of '68, he was one of the few who started from scratch. He is a great researcher and also a great master. He is learning. He is teaching at the Institute of Health in the United States, and another of his pupils will go to Harvard as a professor. So this is what is happening in Italy. They are not going to the US to work as servants, but to work as major researchers. Then she met Giussani, and then she went to the United States, and I hand over to her, who will explain us why she decided to go to the United States. So, first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I've thought again about my experience as a researcher in the United States, and by thinking deeply about this, I've become more aware of my experience, and I'm filled with gratitude. So I work at the National Institute of Health, which is the National Institute for Healthcare, and I work at the National Cancer Institute. The NIH is a huge research center that comprises many cities. It comprises more than 35,000 employees with a budget of over $30 billion per year, which are allotted to research. And it supports 350,000 researchers in 3,000 universities from across the world. So this is a place where you can really be deeply embedded in research. I went there eager to work as a researcher in one of the most important institutions in the area. Now I'm studying the genetic determinants of tumors, of particular types of tumors. For example, the last research work consisted in identifying the genetic determinants of many healthy people and people with tumors. And we compared together the various determinants and variants in order to understand what determinants could cause cancer. And we studied 23,000 people. So this is a full-scale and a big-scale research. So I conduct research on human beings, on whole populations of patients. And I would like to mention very briefly that during this last research project, we realized something which is really interesting and new. We identified areas of the human genome of DNA which were considered as junk DNA in the past because researchers did not know what their purpose is. So we realized that these areas are associated with the development of tumors and other diseases. So we are on the verge of a very important discovery. We don't understand what this discovery will be about, but we are aware that something important is going to happen. So I refer to this example to make you understand how fascinating is to conduct research at this level when you are approaching something new. So this is the experience I had. I have come across a new discovery. And this is interesting because you begin with an assumption. You may have been working on this assumption for many years. But when you find a confirmation of this assumption, then this is a big surprise. This is something that really amazes you, and you feel humble. You have no words. You are wordless. You understand that there is something more. You understand that there is something that goes beyond even your own set of assumptions. And this is an impressive and fascinating experience. You have the impression that you are almost touching infinity and mystery. And I had this direct experience many times. You feel dazzling, you feel in awe, so you back down because you can't stand in this position for long. Then at the end you say, so it's just a question of time, we need more technology and we will ultimately understand anything. But this makes you immediately forget this feeling of infinity that you had, that you perceived. And this is also caused by the dynamics that characterize scientific research in these excellent centers, in these leading centers, where there is cutthroat competition. So everything is a question of being first. If you are the first to discover something, you can publish the discovery on the most important journal and you become famous. So the next time when you try to get funds for another research project, then you are more likely to get these funds because you have made a prior discovery. You can publish more articles with your name, and this is a self-perpetuating cycle. So it's a rush. It's a endless competition. So the type of research work I conduct presupposes the contribution from many people from around the world. So I have to work with researchers coming from other institutions, other countries. For the last research project, all biggest American universities were involved, all the best, all the leading universities, but also North European universities were on the board. Taiwan, China, Australia, all these countries were represented. So the whole Western world was represented, including Italy. And every time that we have to work together, we have interests, our own interests to defend. So we have to be the first. And you can imagine how difficult it is to experience these dynamics. So when I first got there, as Giancarlo said, so I was coming from Italy. I was really eager to work as researcher. I was fascinating to be there in that place, which was the very heart of research. And I had met Don Giussani earlier. And I was convinced by him that there is something more than reality, that reality is filled with promise, but there is something beyond it. So there is something which is worth experiencing in life. So thanks to this meeting with Don Giussani, I decided to go to the States, and there is an aspect of the American culture and mentality which I found very encouraging because they are very eager to take the risk to realize your dream. So there is an ambition, there is a very deep ambition to go beyond one's limits. So I was really fascinated by this and by this attitude when I first got there. But at the same time, I was captured by this mentality, by another aspect of the same mentality, by the downside of it. That is to say, this cutthroat competition, the effort to, so the struggle for power. And this, so what happened? I had, so just got there. I had designed a project, a research project, and I wanted to pursue it, but my superiors did not want me to lead this study project because I was coming from another country, I was very young, so this was a research study that presupposed an investment of many millions of dollars. So I wanted to lead this project, but they didn't allow me to do so. So I called Don Giussani and asked for his opinion, and he told me, but do you really believe in this project? Do you really think that it can be beneficial to tumor patients? And I replied that I really expected something important from this project. And then he told me, but if you impose yourself and if you insist on being the leader, maybe you can find obstacles, your superiors may put obstacles to you. And I told him, okay, so competition is very high. And then why don't you go to your superiors and tell them, I'm really eager to pursue this project and I'm willing to do whatever, even the assistant, provided that the project is accomplished. And I told him, okay, no, it isn't possible. This is my idea. I wrote this study. I'm ready to start. This is my creature. And he said, but I don't understand why you wanted to lead this project. If you're interested in what the project may bring, so why do you want to be the leader? And so during this conversation, I understood that his standpoint was completely different from my standpoint. He had a different perspective, and I was trying to convince him of my point. But at a certain point, I realized that we were on two different standpoints, so thinking from two different standpoints. And then all of a sudden he asked me this question, but what are you living for? And I suddenly found again the ideal that was so fascinating to me in earlier times. So I found myself ridiculous. But up until a second before, I was so eager at getting this project. So at a certain point, after having this realization, I said, okay, having an ideal is important to me, so why have I been taken by this mentality? And he said, so you are living in this environment, so you are being influenced by it. But the question is, every time that you come across something different, then this can give you a sudden inspiration. This can make you connect with the desire that lies very deep in your heart. And herein lies freedom and liberty. So I wanted to report this experience, and this is something which happened many years ago. I've been working there for over 13 years now. But this marked a point of no return. This does not mean that after this moment everything became easy, far from that. But in that very moment I understood the point of view of Christ. I was still praying, I was still faithful, but I couldn't apply this approach to the way I was doing my job. So at a certain point I understood this important point. I can satisfy and meet your desire, the desire of justice. I was still seeking for justice. So I can contribute to this higher plan with my job. So this idea took hold in my soul. And when I was appointed, so when I was given the title of this presentation, I was told that the title was Putting Scientific Research to the Test. And I've been thinking over this title, and I think that competition, struggle for funds, struggle to be the first to publish an article. Okay, this is a reality. This is something that exists. There is this competition. But what is important is this drama, because Christ takes a position that disrupts all of your plans without showing a way. So you are there, you depend on Him, and you have to reassess your experience again and again. And this is very dramatic. This is a very tough situation. I would like to share with you another experience. This is a very recent event. There were 4 research centers. These were the most important universities and research centers in that given area that had started to work together, and they identified a gene that was thought to be associated with the development of a specific type of cancer. This discovery was due to be presented at the World Congress on Cancer Research. And I had a multitude of data on this type of cancer. I'd also been involved in mapping the gene, so I also had the data on the gene. So I went in my database, and I wanted to make sure that this gene was associated with this type of cancer. And I realized that there was no association, no correlation whatsoever. And I was very certain about this result because my sample was much greater than the samples of the 4 institutes that have been working on this project. So I was sure about it, and I also suspected that they may have made a mistake in the study design. So I didn't know what to do. So on the one hand, I wanted to say to them, so there is a mistake here, because I wanted to avoid that the other institutions would work on this gene, which was not correlated with the cancer under study. And the career of the researchers of those top universities was at stake, and also my career was at stake, so you can understand the situation. I was uncertain, I didn't know what to do, so I discussed the situation with my superiors and colleagues, and the World Congress was due to take place in Washington, which is the place where I live. So we organized a satellite meeting the day before. We invited all world experts, and on that venue we had to discuss the question before the Congress in order to understand how to sort out the situation. So there was a meeting, and all these experts presented their data, and the European representative at a certain point raised his hand and he said, so to be sure, to be honest, I couldn't identify this association, so this is not reflected in the European data. So I became courageous after this report, and I confirmed this. And then a very deep silence followed, because, okay, they know that we have a full database of data. We have a high number of data. So the four researchers started to attack us, and they objected to this, said that they had been carrying out investigations and analysis. When I felt under attack, I responded and I challenged them, and so a very bad climate ensued from this. And at the end the moderator said, okay, let's stop this meeting, a coffee break, we will resume later. And during this break, a colleague of mine, an Italian colleague who was attending the meeting, asked me whether it was possible to make an international call. I invited her to my office, so we went out of this building and we entered the other building where my office was located. While she was making this call, I spent 5 minutes in absolute silence in my office, in front of a window, so far away from the confusion in the other room, and I felt deeply sad. I really felt bad. I realized the following: this may be a victory, I may have won this battle, but what's the point? So the question was not to discover truth. The question that was at stake was to be right. And while making this struggle and this discussion, my last thought had been patients, so those who were struggling against this disease. So I suddenly made this realization. So there were all the world experts around the table, and there were also observers around who were attending the meeting, they were listening to the meeting, and I thought of them. And I asked myself, they could never say, by listening to my words, that I am a Christian. So I felt very sad. But during the years, I had realized that when circumstances become very tough, maybe due to a mistake you have made, when you are in a very bad situation, so maybe there is something you can learn. So I realized that there was something there I had to understand, I had to learn. So when my colleague was back, we went back to the meeting. We decided to interrupt our discussion. On the day after, there would be the Congress. And so I've started to think about my approach for the next day. So after this, I went back to my office. I had to download some data. And I saw that there was an email from a friend of mine. And in this email, she said, "Have you read the editorial of Balbasete, an American theologist, on the online Sussidiario?" And I was attracted by it, so I read this editorial article. Albacete, in this editorial article, described a movie. Ricomincio da capo, this is the Italian title of the movie. So the main character is a person who continues to experience the same day. So a new day starts, but then he realizes that it's always February the 2nd. It's always the same day that he lives and experiences again and again. And he tries very hard to escape this. He tries to take his life. At the end, he manages to get out of this cycle thanks to the love for his woman, Rita. And he ended the editorial article in this way. I also have my Rita. And this teaches us to transform the time cycle in a source of charity for the others. And this is the presence of Christ after resurrection. And he can make sure that every day becomes a new day, so that every morning we can wake and it's a February the 3rd, and it's a completely new day. So when I read these words, I was struck, I was moved. So I suddenly understood that I was experiencing this time cycle. So I was still in the same scheme of thought, who is right, who is wrong, and so on and so forth. I had made a sudden realization, but I didn't know what to do. I had realized that I could not use the approach I had decided to use. I understood that I couldn't go there and say I'm right, I have this data, but I didn't know what to do. I understood that this approach was wrong, but I couldn't think of a better approach. And I was expecting for something to happen. So I was very tensed. I went to bed, I prayed, and on the next morning I was going to the Congress. I was driving to the Congress. I was at a traffic light, and suddenly I had an idea. But I'm attending the World Congress, where there are world experts from all over the world. And instead of going there and say, I'm right, instead I could say, why don't we join forces, all nations of the world, all the centers that have data available. So when we join forces, when we work together, when we have a bigger database, we can do something for the benefit of the patients. So, but I suddenly realized that this idea had not come from inside me, because it was considering all the various factors at stake. It was considering the good and the benefit for other people. It was considering the search for truth. It was considering the fact that it was not a question of competition, it was a question of working together. So I felt deeply moved by this realization. And I was also moved, and at the end this is what happened. So we decided to join forces and work jointly on this project. And I felt very well, because I recognized a superior presence, and I also realized that I had to understand more about this gene and about this tumor, but I also understand that God is here, is in your life, and you can feel His presence.
Another example. There's an important professor in the most important university in my field. I mean, he approached me and I was very impressed, and I felt very good about it. And also they offered me a great deal of money, both in terms of my salary and also in the research that they would allow me to do. And I don't know why, however, but there was something that I didn't quite like about the offer. I went there, and I'd been there several times. They showed me the home that I would have. I spoke to friends about it, but there was something that I wasn't really convinced about. Anyway, months went by, backwards and forwards, because they gave me a year to choose. And after a while, I went to speak with Giancarlo, and he said to me in 30 seconds, he summed up the question, and he said, leave aside the whole question of the money, the prestige of being the head and so on. Answer this question, he said to me. Where can you best do research for the good of people, he asked me. And when he put that question in a nanosecond, I immediately understood I should stay at NIH because I'd been there for 8 years. We had gone ahead with the result, and if I just left things as they stood, we wouldn't have really made any headway. And also, it's only in a place like NIH that I could have that sort of facility. And so at that very moment, I understood that I should stay where I was. But yet again, I had to have somebody to spur me to that ideal, to remind me of that ideal that fired me. Because here again, I was thinking about whether I should change my job and so on for the prestige and so on. But really, I really was able to understand more what I desire, what I want. Another example. And this is something I really want to tell you because this is something I've learnt over time, and time is all important, really fundamental to get your head around things like this. First of all, before going to America, when I worked at the University of Milan, before going to America, I was at an international congress at which they presented certain data, and 2 professors were given awards. There were many speeches and so on. This was a congress that was held in America. And then I went back to Italy, and I really didn't understand all the enthusiasm, all the hullabaloo about the thing, but I would have liked to have had that. And I asked Giussani about this and asked him his advice. And I said, how do you see this? And he said, knowledge that doesn't take into account all factors isn't really knowledge. In other words, people think that there is everything, but the reality of things is infinite, not just in one particular place or about one particular thing. And he says, who has the awareness of the infinite perspectives feels humiliated in the world, because the world will put incense and fires on Einstein and and Pasteur, for example, and not on you, who are a very small, little, infinite researcher. And you, who have the sense of being the last, will be called a bigot, and the others will be scientists and will wage a world war to impose their formulae or to steal other people's formulae. You, who have an awareness of being a very small person who eats and sleeps like everybody, will sustain the souls of all of your friends, and you will go to the United States to bring that breath, that you will be a scientist and a researcher, knowing full well of the smallness of the things that you're doing and the greatness of why you are going there. Now, when he said this, I didn't admit it to myself for a long time. In fact, I really wasn't very convinced about this, because I felt it was a bit demeaning. Okay, I thought to myself, as I can't be among the greats. I mean, I'll be one of the people looked up to by my friends, but I wanted to be one of the greats. I wanted to be there again, enjoying all the celebrations of those people at that conference who received those awards. And now, for example, that I have received prizes, I have been up there on the stand before lots of people. Now that this has happened, I have understood what Don Giussani said many years ago. It was of an enormous revolutionary breadth for me. Not only did he assert what reality is, because it's true that reality is infinite. We know this full well, we researchers. When you find something, you see immediately that thousands of other questions are opened up as a result of you finding that one thing. We know that that's how things are. But that's not the only reason. Don Giussani let me understand that the breath that I have, that my little being has a link with the infinite. And it allows you to have a very different position and stance vis-à-vis what you're doing on your job. I mean, you mustn't expect the satisfaction of being written up in the newspapers or being asked to congresses. You are there as a presence in the present and you have a relationship with the infinite. You know why you're there. If you do a job well, I've, for example, very often stayed late at night at work. Nobody knows that, but I'm satisfied. And why? I'm satisfied because I am responding and answering someone. My conscience tells me I am aware of this other thing. So there is this possibility that in the present time you have this relationship with the infinite, and that helps you when you have these moments, but also in the everyday boring routine. I'm there 12, 16, 20 hours a day before a computer trying to interpret data, the same thing, going back, trying again, going back again, seeing if there's a different result. And you can get a sense of this because you know what you're doing, you know what you're answering. Otherwise, when things don't go well, and this often happens, you immediately start to think, oh, I'm going to leave things alone, I'm going to go elsewhere. When that thing that you're doing doesn't seem to be fashionable or to be something worthwhile. And if you want to hit the headlines, you have to do something different. You have to make a big discovery. And when things don't go well, you tend, if you have this mentality, to want to discard and leave aside things. And this is another anecdote. Some years ago, we were studying gene by gene. We weren't looking at the map of the whole genome. And we were looking at a series of mutations in a gene which would seem to increase the development of a cancer, and this was often seen in families. And we started, therefore, to study families because many families seem to have the appearance of this cancer as a result of this change in the gene. And we went backwards and forwards, and things seemed to work and didn't. One day, a family came to us to be examined, and it had been followed in Cesana, in fact, by Donata Calista. This family had 5 members that had had the same sort of tumor. Unfortunately, 5 had already died by the time the family got to us. Of course, we couldn't study them. And the 5th, and another one, was a distant relation, didn't have this mutation, however. The fact that this was a distant relation didn't really help us or reassure us a great deal. And I wasn't very sure about this, what we were doing, because we'd seen a mutation in a healthy person of that same family. So we said, okay, if he's healthy, this means, therefore, that this genetic mutation doesn't really cause cancer. Otherwise, that person would have cancer as well. But this person is 39. If this mutation were to lead to malignant cancer. There's still time for the development of that cancer. But other people say, well, no, let's not do that. That's not a good idea. But anyway, what we decided at the end of the day was to try and simulate this over the computer and see what this mutation would cause on the protein, at least theoretically, because this mutation had never been found before. And what we saw was this. I'd like to show you this. This is the structural model of this protein. The original protein had this in green and blue here. It had hydrogen atoms on the surface which allowed for binding with other proteins. But what happened with the mutation was that the mutation changed just one amino acid. This became yellow. And these were atoms which were no longer closed on one another, and then they became closed on one another. Perhaps we said they can't enter into any relationship with the others. But what had happened was that 2 or 3 days before, Don Giussani had circulated a letter to the Brotherhood of Comunione e Liberazione. It was a difficult letter. And he talked about being. He said being and people bend to their opposite number. And he says what is important is the relationship, like in the Trinity. The most important thing is the relationship. And when I looked at this particular scientific fact, I said to myself, well, if this works in all aspects of reality, perhaps something so very small acts in the same way. These are closed one against another, and therefore they can't open up and have a relationship with others, these two elements, I said. So I went along this line of thought, and others took me up and up, and we went to see what they were doing in Toronto University, where they were studying these things, and we looked at how this protein interacted with others, and we saw that this interaction was very much reduced, especially with a protein which was fundamental to control the cell cycle, which is, of course, important in the development of cancer. And I said, well, we really have to look at this person and look at this aspect. And in fact, sometime afterwards, a family came with 4 sufferers of cancer, and all 4 had this same mutation. So I said, okay, had I not thought about that and focused my attention on this question of the relationship, had I not had that stance, that viewpoint, I perhaps would never have seen this, and this would never have been discovered. Caron very often mentioned a comment of the Pope saying that the contribution of us Christians is when the knowledge of faith becomes a contribution, and the contribution of faith becomes a contribution to real life. And my contribution was thanks to what I had lived in real life. And what I'd like to draw from this is that even the ideal of young people, and the thing that inflamed me by way of ideals, something that seemed almost impossible to achieve, however, but I really wanted to get there. When Don Gius, for example, said to us, work for a Christian is the most arid and concrete aspect of our love for Christ. And he said, love is not a sentiment, it's a judgment of intelligence which takes with it all human sentiment. And I said, and I was thinking about this before I took the floor here, all those struggles, this going back again and retesting things, this work within work, this drama, in fact, has all proved to me that he is there, and that's what held me and kept me going. Now, I don't look and see, I mean, has he changed me? Do I win? Do I not win? That's not my attitude. Many people have lost their job in this period of crisis. Very dear friends have lost their employment. and they're doing everything to try and find a job, or they do 2 or 3 jobs a day to bring bread home, to feed mouths. I have friends who have children. They have to get up at night. They're completely overwhelmed by these children and by their needs. And I, too, am before a computer 12, 20 hours a day. I'm there to affirm and assert Him, Christ. This is what I offer. I offer my life. And He will think and decide what He wants to do with me. Perhaps I might discover something important for cancer, or perhaps I might help people in Haiti. And He has showed me that that's how things are. Even very recently, I received a letter. Very recently, I have got permission to read it. I'll read a very small part of it to show you what I mean. The letter reads like this. I think the person who wrote it is here. Dear Teresa, I'm called Santina and I live in Abruzzo with my husband and 2 children. In 2005, a melanoma on my back was diagnosed. At the same time, I tried to get information on the internet about my disease. I saw everything, but I couldn't find any of the publications of the doctor that is looking after me. I was asked for payment for the full text, and then going on the internet, I, in fact, found that article when you talked about the whole incident about why are you living for, what are you living for? And in fact, this is what I just told you a while ago. It's on the internet as well. And this letter continues. From that day, my life has changed. It was the summer of 2006. Your testimony was read by me several times, and it gave me a calm mixed with astonishment. I didn't understand, but now I do. I live for Christ, and I wondered how a doctor could affirm that she lives for Christ. And then she tells me about her conversation and further comments. And then she said, Dear Teresa, the disease has come back again, and I will soon have to have a lung intervention to surgery to remove 5 nodules. I am worried, it's true, but I'm still calm because I have entrusted myself to the Lord, aware that everything that He does is good for my life. And then she thanks me for my testimony and for bearing witness, even if it's such a long distance. I received this letter the day after I had asked the Madonna for something, because I asked her, you have to really allow me to understand what my task is in here in this place. And I was really moved by this letter that I received the day after. And who were to say that even a mistake that I made and the correction that Don Jus gave me would have helped somebody so far away very many years afterwards, that person in such a dramatic situation of discovering she has cancer. And how can you explain this? And also recently the friendship that I have developed with this person that I didn't even know about before. And we would give our lives one for the other now. And what is this friendship? The fact that gradually one can change. And this is something that I have understood. That the ideal can happen is because He is faithful. It's not me or I who am capable, who is capable, but He is faithful. He recalls me back to the ideal all the time. Whether I falter or fail, He still calls me back. And He finds me changed. And I don't think I'm capable of that sort of love. Only He is capable of that sort of love. I'd like to give you a last example because it's something that really moved me. This happened very recently. And it allowed me to understand two things. One is that there is no desire or application that one cannot put. Perhaps it waits for an answer for a very long time, but you can always make that application. And then again, that look and glance of Don Giovanni, which fired me to search for what is right. This desire to go back, and this need that I have in my work, which is part of my work, to test, to retest, to go back again. This allows you in this situation to have a human glance, and which changes things. And I'd like to tell you this little story. When we select the postdocs to work with us, the selection is very strict and stringent. We look at their CVs, their resumes, we'll see where they've studied, if they're prepared, if they're interested in what we're interested in, if they can be part of our team, and so on. Taking postdoc people is very important because they're the people that carry things along and draft those publications and so on. And one day, I was asked whether I could, along with the postdocs that we'd taken, take someone who came from a special NIH program, a great program. The NIH people, in fact, pick out people of great talent, but who are very needy, and they're given grants allowing them to study, and then they allow them to come to the NIH once they've got their degree or their PhD as in medicines, and they can continue to learn under a system of tutorage. And I was asked to take one of these people. And I talked to my colleagues about this, and the colleagues said, well, be careful here, because he doesn't have this training that you need and that we need. You're really going to need to take a lot of time out with this postdoc person, and it's going to take up a lot of your time, which is not productive, so be careful, I was warned. But if you like, my decision was quite easy. I was very grateful for what I had been given. I said, if I hadn't had Pierroberto in Milan and other people who worked there, I wouldn't have been given this push. And also at the NIH, I had an exceptional tutor, Wallace Clark. Had I not had the attention given to me by various maestros, I wouldn't be here saying, well, I have the privilege of choosing a postdoc. So I said, no, I want to take this young lad, and I'll try. So David came, and we started working very well together. At the end of the day, everyone went home, but I stayed with him in the evening, reading data, explaining things, what these results actually mean. And this went on for some time, and he was really very sharp. He's very sharp and very enthusiastic. It was great to work with him, but nonetheless, it took up a lot of my time. And one day, when I said, oh, he seems to be able to go on his own, etc., he said to me, well, as soon as I finish with NIH, I, in fact, he said to me, would like to do something else. I would like to become concerned with national health policies to help the poor people of my little town, because he comes from a very poor town. And when I heard this, I said, well, all that down the drain. Everything that I had taught him, I was teaching him, could never have been used where he wanted to go. And also, I don't understand anything about healthcare policies. And there again, there was a nanosecond again. He said this to me very enthusiastically. And I said to myself, now, what am I going to say? And then I remembered what had happened to me before, when Don Giuseppe had said to me, what are you living for? And I thought to myself, he is there in front of me asking me something. I mean, you, Jesus, are asking me for something. You've put me in this position. And I wanted to see this assertion of his desire and bring it towards my project as well. And I said, okay. I mean, I have to start talking with my colleagues. We found things about healthcare policy. We developed a project for him to do a master's and so on. And seeing him so accomplished, so happy in what he was doing, being able to do something for his town, gave me such enthusiasm and satisfaction. And I realized that that was really the satisfaction, much greater satisfaction than had he continued in my work. And something else, during the moments of the Haiti earthquake, looking at the pictures, I wondered whether, in fact, I should leave what I was doing and go and help the people in Haiti. Many Americans did so. And talking to people about this, I understood that the sort of people and skills that they needed there was not the sort of skills I had. And it was much more reasonable to stay where I was. But I said to myself, all right, I won't go, I'll stay. But again, I said to Jesus, you have put me in this position, which is my objective position. I have all the data there, and everything converges to confirming the fact that I am in the right place. I understand that, I said, but this is something that you can do for years and years as a job, but you never will know if really what you're doing is of use, the sort of research. I mean, perhaps it's better I don't go and heal the sick. I don't go to developing countries, poor countries. And I said, you have put me in this position, but you've given me nonetheless the desire to go out there and help the poor people. I still have that desire. And so, I mean, how do you make these two things jibe? I said to Jesus. The fact that you put me here, but I still have the desire to do something else. And then I went on, and I, in fact, forgot this application that I made to Jesus. But at a certain point, after months, in fact, there was a program on CNN. They showed pictures of Haiti's reconstruction and the very difficult situation that people are still living in and so on. And I remembered that question that I asked of Jesus at the time. And I thought, you want to bet that everything that has happened with David, to a certain extent, you have engineered this to give me that answer. Because not only did I help David, but he now is actually putting into action these healthcare policies among the poor people, something that I wanted to do. And he is now able to do it because I'd helped him. And I never connected the two things. So it really, really moved me. And the other day I said, I'd like to tell you this, tell the Rimini meeting about this. So would you allow me to tell me this story? And he wrote back and said to me, say that I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life, because there I not only learned to interpret data and statistics, but I have understood things about priority, how to work, and especially how to look at things without risking my desire. And I promise that I will do everything to help my people, and you will be with me. You will help them with me. But what I want to give to them now is especially this glance and look that you have.
abbastanza. Un mio amico morto.
A friend of mine who died, who had a premature death a few years ago, he was speaking of my job, and he said that physicians have an ambiguous relation with their patients because they base their means of livelihood on them. And the same holds true for lawyers, for judges, for politicians. So we have seen that a noble environment such as the environment of scientific research is very ambiguous because reality is never final. It is always suggestive, and suggestive means that it gives suggestions, but it does not provide the solutions. And our human position and the Christian position is neither a thought nor a choice. Instead, it is a vocation. It's a call. And it's a call that is linked with one's desire. So God makes everything possible to make sure that there is correspondence between one person's ideal and life circumstances. And if life is a call, and parents call you to life, it's parents who call you. So life is a call, and if life is a call, then it means that life is there for a vocation, for something, for a task. And the way in which someone responds to it, to this vocation, is the job. And the outcome of the job, the goal of the job is to find truth. And truth is something that is much bigger than one can conceive. And as Maria Teresa realized when she had to fight for her discovery against her opponents, then she realized that the only right way to address reality is to go deep into it, is to try and find the truth, and is to join forces to get there. And this is what man really is. Because when there is no truth, then it means that there is no question, no demand. And being is a relationship, as we have heard from her experience.
Scusate. Adesso alle 17 c'è un...
Now at 5 p.m. there is another meeting which is entitled A Statement of Dostoevsky. Can a learned man believe in the truth of Jesus Christ? And this meeting will be held by the Archbishop, by the President of the International Conference of Archbishops, and the other is a Catholic, another a representative of Catholicism, and then a representative of Orthodoxy. I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert in church history, but this is the first time they come together and discuss these themes in a lay environment. So this is really a rare occasion, a rare opportunity for you to listen to them.